Hey everybody, I just want to talk some about consciousness today. It's a vast topic, understood in many different ways throughout many different religious traditions and spiritual traditions. There's a little bit of a difference. Spirituality is more related to the connections between people. Religion is more based on dogma. That's why I consider myself more spiritual. But I think as far as consciousness goes, we're gonna go ahead and start with Asatru. Asatru is a pre-Christian European shamanistic faith that deals with gods that are archetypes in a way of consciousness. They're conscious archetypes. So the runes that pretty much were the founding blocks of this universe and the multiverse were archetypal energies. They're not self-conscious as the gods are, but they are energies that are multifarious, and their influences intersect in a way that this universe and all the other universes in the multiverse were able to exist through their intersections. And where the runes intersect, whether they be Laguz, Gebo, Fehu, Othel, Othila, Tyr, or wherever these runes intersect, whether it's the rune of flow, whether it's the rune of separation, whether it's the rune of wealth, whether it's the rune of partnership, wherever these basic archetypal energies intersect, a god is born, a god is created. Just after the runes were created, they intersected and created these different gods by the Asatru faith. I'm just talking about the Asatru faith right now. And then, these energies represent things in other faiths. But we're talking about just Asatru right now, how they identify these different forces. And as the gods are created, for instance, Thor may be created by the intersection of Othila, separation, Rado, journey, and Hegals, disruption, also the primordial seed. Where they all intersect, that's why Thor's rune, or sigil, is the combination of these three things. Thor is created. It's not necessarily a soul as much as it is a station. And it's whatever consciousness is at that station at the time, completely embodies that station, is where the god Thor just is. Whatever soul is at that rank for that time, that's where he is at that station. If he completely embodies that specific intersection, that's how each god basically is formed in Asatru. And in other faiths, they call them other things in other faiths, and I'm about to get into that. But that's where the gods created, and where the gods intersect, which is far more intersections, a life form is created. Every life is the intersection of a god. And this is kind of hard to understand, but the god's influence intersects at so many different points that every life form is an intersection of the gods. That's why that's why the runes are called the gods of the gods, because there's fewer intersections, and there's more intersections, and then there's even more that creates life in this universe and the multiverse. And these are every single rune, every single god, and every single intersection that creates all that, including life. These are all different levels of consciousness. So you got the runes as one level of consciousness, then you have the gods at another level, and then you have all life at another level, and there's different levels in life. For instance, even rocks and stones and minerals, they have a certain degree of consciousness just by their basic nature, by their existence. They have to be some intersections that create consciousness. Then you have plants, which are a higher degree of consciousness, because they have life. They have a desire to live and grow towards the light. And then you have, of course, animals, which is the higher degree of consciousness, the higher magnitude, and they have even more consciousness than plants. And then you get to humans, which we are sentient, so we have one of the highest magnitudes of consciousness in the multiverse in this realm. There's other life forms that are sentient throughout the universe, I'm almost sure, because to have such a vast universe, just this one, not any other universe in the multiverse, without and just having life on Earth doesn't make sense to me, and it's not what is propagated in Hinduism or even Asatru. There's different sentient beings within this universe, but they all have a relatively same consciousness level, relatively similar magnitude of consciousness to what we are as sentient humans on Earth. And then, there's ones with higher magnitude of consciousness where you might consider them angels, asuras, or you might consider them Valkyries. In Asatru, they're Valkyries. In Hinduism, they're suras. And then you have the gods after that. There's a whole bunch of spirits in between, but that's the basic makeup of where we're at, just right above us, and kind of below us is the asuras, demons in Hinduism. And in Asatru, there's the dark elves, there's the light elves. Light elves are higher than us. Dark elves are lower. Dwarves are kind of at a similar midpoint with us. There's just all kinds of different spirits and souls that have different conscious states in the multiverse. But in other traditions, consciousness also has a very deep role if you look deep within the writings. In Asatru, you can take it for face value and you won't really understand anything about consciousness. You can do the religious rituals, but if you don't understand the deeper esoteric meaning, the different levels of consciousness, then you're not really getting the point. You're not really getting the message of the stories and the words and the meanings of the different races of beings in Asatru and in Hinduism, for instance, as well. I consider myself first and foremost Hindu, but I do also honor my ancestral gods. So I am Asatru in a certain sense. I'm just not first and foremost Asatru, because I found more answers in Hinduism, for instance, about consciousness, than I ever found in Asatru. And I studied Hinduism first, but I was born to atheist parents, so I was looking for as many answers as I could, because I always felt that there was something more to it, more to consciousness, more to existence, more to life than just the material. So I've studied all major religions, and I've studied Asatru as well, but Hinduism is what makes the most sense to me and has the most to say about consciousness. Now, getting into Hinduism views gods very similar to Asatru, but there's a few differences. They're very, very numerous. In Hinduism, there's thousands of gods. There's so many different descriptions of the different forms of consciousness that are on the god level. There's so many different functions that are mapped out that, and in Hinduism, this is how we put it, is the different functions of God's consciousness. The different functions are more isolated. God is the one God, the spirit beyond creation, is infinite, and then you have the causal realm where the gods are at. Then you have the astral, which is where the angels are at, and then when we're enlightened, we go there. Then you have our realm, whether you want to call it the universe or Midgard or just Earth in a sense. In a lot of traditions, just describes this universe. And then you have the dark side of the astral realm, which is Nagloka in Hinduism, or the realm of the dark elves, or where Nidhogg lives in Asatru. But in all traditions, there's these levels. And in Hinduism, there's so many different kinds of descriptions of consciousness that these gods basically are described into existence. Now, I'll explain what this means. There are so many different levels of consciousness and points of consciousness in the universe and in the multiverse and in the different dimensions that you can find a being or a god or an angel or a spirit that is at any point. That is at any point in the multiverse in the different dimensions. You can find one that represents any combination of ideas that you can come up with. The ones that are mapped out in Hinduism are in the thousands, just